Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are advancing the cause of constitutional freedom and liberty, raising the profile of great constitutional conservative candidates across the state of Louisiana, and day by day, steadily, relentlessly, inexorably, and courageously draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You are the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for. And you know that we're only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, your friendship, your financial support. And if you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please do that at freedomstate.us. We would also love it if you would help us get the word out about the State of Freedom and help spread the reach. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the whole interview or whole episode over on our YouTube and Rumble channels. And links to those, as you know, are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Well, welcome to our 150th episode. It has been a wild ride, folks. We have so much to catch you up on from this past week and so much to look forward to at the Capitol in the week ahead. Well, in fact, there were some very spicy happenings this week. There's one in particular directly involving LACAG that we have clipped to share with you. But before we get rolling with the bills, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Psalm chapter 4, verses 2 through 4, and it says, "Listen to me, you elite among men. How long will you defame my honor and drag it down into shame? Will you ever stop insulting me? How long will you set your heart on shadows, chasing your lies and delusions? May we never forget that the Lord works wonders for every one of his devoted lovers, and this is how I know that he will answer my every prayer. Tremble in awe before the Lord, and do not sin against him. Be still upon your bed, and search your heart before him. Pause in his presence." And this scripture is evidence that King Solomon was right in Ecclesiastes when he said that there's nothing new under the sun. This passage was written by his father, David, when he was king, and in it, he puts his own swamp on notice. Through his words, we're reminded that when insults come and when those in positions of power insist on trading in lies and doing shady deals, we have nothing to fear because the Lord works wonders for every one of his devoted lovers. David strengthened himself in the truth of the Lord by reminding himself of his history with the Lord. He knew then, and he's encouraging us still through his words now, that the Lord is faithful, and he will answer our every prayer as we remain pure before him. He instructs us to daily search our own hearts and make sure that we're living a lifestyle of daily repentance and pursuit of holiness so that we are keeping a right relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. And you know what that requires, Danielle? That requires daily time set aside for God. Daily silent times. You know, I think it's impossible to do what you just did, what you just talked about, and what David did, and what all the great prophets did, really, and all the great saints have done, to maintain that close relationship with God, to make sure our motives are pure, and to make sure that we are doing everything for his glory. I don't see how it's possible to do that consistently without separating ourselves from the noise and the crowd consistently and frequently, to be alone with the Lord. I just don't see how that's possible. And yet there are so many distractions. They are so relentless. And it just seems like whenever something has to go, the most important thing often is the thing that goes. And that's the 30 or 45 minutes or an hour of quiet time every day with God. And so it's important for us to keep that in mind and to prioritize that time with the Lord, because I think that's the only thing that can really keep us in a state of grace moving forward. That's the only thing. Otherwise, the world just rips our soul apart. And this world does that. The second thing, on a little lighter note, I wanted to mention, are you saying that they've had swamps going all the way back to the time of David.
I am saying that. I am absolutely saying that. Yeah.
So David had to drain the swamp.
David had to drain his own swamp. That's right.
Well, let me tell you what. It's there are days when I wish we had David here to help us drain ours. But you know what? We have some contemporary Davids. So so there we are. But anyway, that's a very powerful scripture and a great, great reminder of how to stay focused on God.
Yeah. And just like you said, Chris, it's a daily discipline, and it's just something that we have to prioritize if we want to keep our heads on straight, if we want to keep our hearts straight. We've just got to make it happen. So anyway.
And, well, let me say this, and I say this with, I guess, a slight bit of hyperbole, but not too much, that you have really pulled me back from the precipice of lunacy more than one time since we've been engaged together. I felt like you have been really the catcher in the rye, and I'm the little 7-year-old kid who's about to fall over the cliff, and you just keep pushing me back toward the green grass. It's like, I will not let you fall off this cliff. And so I want to just extend a heartfelt gratitude for that, and just keep your arms outstretched for me, Danielle.
I will, but it takes both of us. It does take the teamwork, honestly. We all have our precipice moments, and you have pulled me back as well. So I'm not going to let that go unanswered.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Well, Chris, we have so much happening. I just want to remind folks before we get into it that you should come to the Capitol. There's so much happening. There are so many bills on a variety of topics, many of which should probably set a lot of our hair on fire. So please try and find a day to come to the Capitol. Email us at info@lacag.org or chris@lacag.org. We'll get Chris directly. Let him know that you're coming. Let him know what's important to you. And we just want to make sure that the voices of everyday Louisiana citizens are being heard, are being respected, and that our legislators know that we care about what's going on, and they're not operating in a vacuum any longer.
Exactly. They're not operating in a vacuum. And, the more, Danielle, Raymond Cruz has told us, Blake Miguez has told us, Kathy Edmonston has told us, Valerie Hodges, just multiple senators and reps have said how much of a difference healthy grassroots pressure makes, A, and B, how much they appreciate it and how much it emboldens them when they're presenting legislation or even opposing legislation to have grassroots warriors down there standing side by side with them. It means it makes all the difference in the world to them. And so, I would just echo what you're saying, to reach out to me when you want to come down to the Capitol, and you would be a welcome addition. Again, you have music inside of you, and we want to hear it. So let us know.
Let us know. And just, I guess, a headline on this episode. Look, the bills, if we could tell you how many bills we have to review on a weekly basis, we don't have time to count how many there are. So the bills we're mentioning today are not an exhaustive list. We try and choose the most important ones. Other ones that may be more important to you may not be on our list. We can only do so much. We can only do so much. But we hope that this gives you a really, really great, powerful thumbnail of what has happened this past week and what to expect in the week ahead.
And by the way, Danielle, I want to just mention this, that we encourage y'all to reach out to us if there is another bill that we haven't mentioned on one of our podcasts that may not be up on the call to action page. We are always eager and willing to listen. We don't see everything. I mean, they've got 1,200 bills that were pre-filed this time. So if there's a bill that concerns you or that we haven't talked about, please reach out to us and tell us about it. And we will absolutely include it in our podcast, maybe even put a graphic up on Facebook or our social media platforms for you. So we encourage you to let us know what is important to you, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, Chris, let's go ahead and get into it because I know we have a ton of ground to cover. Let's start out with two big floor votes from this week. Representative Edmonston brought her House Bill 46 to the floor of the House, and that one just says that nobody should be required to receive a COVID-19 vaccine as a condition of enrollment or attendance at any public or non-public school. Obviously, we were in strong support of this bill. It passed 74-28. There were 5 Democrats who joined the Republicans in favor of Representative Edmonston's bill. They were Roy Adams, Chad Brown, Timmy Chasson, Sean Mina, Larry Selders. There was 1 Republican, Vincent Cox, who joined the rest of the Democrats, and there were 3 Republicans absent. I don't think it really necessarily bears mentioning their names because it had strong support.
Well, and it couldn't have been absent Owen because he's over in the Senate now, and that's the only thing that could make it significant. Yeah, this is a great bill. I feel like this bill has been hanging around, Danielle, for 50 years, but it hasn't.
9 lives.
Oh my gosh, it's like, because it was killed on the House floor one year, it was vetoed by Edwards another year, but it's a great, great bill, and just forget about mandating this, the COVID shot on students ever again in the state of Louisiana. Please go through the Senate committee and Senate, and Governor Ed Landry, please sign this so that we can be done with this and have a very important law on the books.
Yeah,
to protect our children.
Absolutely. And Representative Edmonston also brought another bill, House Bill 47, that requires parents' right to opt their children out of vaccines to be communicated alongside of any information about vaccine requirements coming home from the schools. Chris, you testified on this bill whenever it was in the committee, the Education Committee, I believe. We obviously are in strong support of it as well. But this is where the spicy proceedings started. It's by no means where they ended, but we can just say that it's where they started. An amendment was brought by Representative Jessica Domingue to this bill that completely and absolutely changes the purpose of the bill. Chris, would you talk about that?
Yes, but I'd like to say this first, that and this is maybe a bit of double entendre. I think spicy language and virtually incomprehensible gibberish appear to be Domingue's domain this past week. And so House Bill 47, Representative Jessica Domingue on the floor. This bill simply would have required, as you said, Danielle, anytime the government sends out immunization notices to students in the state of Louisiana. Oh, your vaccine time is coming up. Make sure you get your vaccine. Make sure you get your immunization. They always have to include, now in that, under this bill, they have to include very clearly that the recipient has a right to exempt from the vaccine. Many parents may still not know that. They certainly didn't know that during COVID because people like Edwards weren't advertising it. They were too busy trying to get bribe people to get the vaccine. So the point is, it would simply say you have an exemption right to any vaccine. That's all that it said. It was on its way through the House floor, yet the newly minted Representative Jessica Domingue stands up and offers an amendment that will now require parents before she basically, it's not even an amendment of the bill, and it's an amendment of another part of the statute that requires, in addition to a parent submitting a written dissent that we don't want my kid to do the vaccine, they now, because of Jessica Domingue's amendment that she offered on the floor, before a parent can say, my kid's opting out of any vaccine, doesn't want to do it, they have to go to a doctor and get the doctor to sign off on it. So because of Jessica Domingue's amendment, a doctor now has greater authority in this area and over this decision than a parent about whether a child has to get a vaccine or not. I couldn't understand this when I was listening to this. It has nothing to do with the bill. She amended another part of the statute, and I don't know why it passed 51-50. And I think it may be because some of the Republicans really didn't understand what was going on.
Well, perhaps. And Chris, would you talk about what the reasoning behind the amendment was? Because I found that very head scratching.
Oh, the reason behind the amendment was that she apparently thinks that if parents are not required to take their kid to a doctor before they submit a written dissent from a vaccine, that parents are not going to take their kids to the doctor. And we're going to be living in a morass of parental neglect where parents never take their kids to the doctors. That was the whole suggestion of her amendment.
Because the only time that parents take their kids to the doctor is because the state tells them to. Is that what you're saying, Chris?
Yes, absolutely. She's up there basically saying that if I don't put this amendment on here requiring a physician to sign off on a parental dissent of a vaccine for their kid, then parents are never going to take their kids to the doctor. It's an insult to parents across the state, in addition to the fact, as I said, that it elevates the opinion of a doctor above the decision of a parent with regard to whether or not their own child should get a vaccine. Well, there's been a lot of fallout from this, Danielle.
Well, there has been, and I know that she's been hammered pretty hard on Facebook, and I just have to say, it's just so insulting, and it goes against the entire purpose of the bill. That it's not an amendment to the bill, as you said, Chris. I mean, technically it's called an amendment, but it did not amend the bill. It destroyed the bill, and it actually made what we have worse as a result of it. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the names of every single Republican who voted in favor of this amendment, because I think we have to.
Well, it's very, very important that we do that. Again, Danielle, all this bill did was require the government to let parents know when they send immunization notices out that they have a right to exempt. That's it. She goes to an entirely different part of the statute and amends another part of the statute. The current law simply says that parents, all they have to do is submit a written dissent and say, we don't want to do the vaccine, it's over. But because of her amendment, now they have to go get a doctor to sign off on it. It is outrageous.
And let me just put a little point of clarity on that. So the law that says that parents have the right to exempt their children has been on the books for 20 years. This is not what this bill was doing. The bill was simply saying that parents need to know that they have the right to opt out. That's all. So we have been fighting against people for how long, Chris, people in the legislature do not want the parents of Louisiana to know their rights. That is what we're up against. That's what we've been up against. I did not see this coming. I have to say, I did not see it coming from my representative, but here we are.
Here we are. And that's exactly right. That has been, parents have had the written right of dissent for 20 years. And this simply would make this amendment, or this bill simply will make sure that parents know that they have that right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me give out the list. So if any of these are your legislator, you write them a spicy note and let them know that you are very unhappy with their vote. First up, Larry Bagley, Stephanie Baralt, Beth Billings, Jacob Broad, DeWitt Carrier, Jessica Domingue, Troy Hebert, Chance Henry, John Ilg, Timothy Kerner, Jeremy Lacombe, Joseph Ogeron, Polly Thomas, Chris Turner, Debbie Villio, Jeff Wiley, and Z. Jerome Zerang.
What Republicans were absent? Were there any Republicans who were absent?
There may have been, but I didn't put that down in my notes.
I was just curious if there were Republicans. Yeah, there's plenty of Republicans voting in favor of this. It passed only 51-50. All we needed was one Republican to vote the other way, and the amendment fails. But when I tell you, she didn't even know what she was talking about. I would encourage people to go and listen to this gibberish. She really didn't really understand what she was talking about. I'm surprised, honestly, that Representative Edmonston, and she's a great legislator, that she didn't say, I object on grounds of germaneness. This is not germane to my bill.
Yeah. And Chris, this is in no means the end of the road for this bill. I think it's more important now than ever that you get over to the Action Center, that you send a note to your senator. We have the Senate committee up there, and we have every single person's senator on there. Let them know that this amendment is straight garbage and that you want to see it revoked before the bill meets its final end.
Amen. And this amendment is going to be stripped off on the Senate side. That is my strong and confident prediction, and it should be.
Yeah, it should be. All right. Well, getting into some of what happened in the committees. First up is Senate Bill 302 by Senator Caffey, and this one's related to traffic ticketing. We support this bill. It was reported favorably from Senate Transportation with some amendments. Chris, I don't know the vote breakdown on this one, but it is scheduled for a full vote on Monday, the 8th.
Yes, there were some amendments put on the bill, but it's still a good bill. It will still weaken the government's right to enforce these ridiculous and obnoxious red light tickets that they send you in the mail. We want this to pass. Stuart Cathy's a very good legislator, and if this passes, it will go a long way in eliminating these obnoxious red light tickets.
Yeah, it's a great pro-freedom bill. Next up is Senate Bill 5 by Senator Blake Miguez. It would require fiduciaries for public retirement systems to make investment decisions based solely on financial factors. Chris, you testified in support of this. It failed in committee in a 3-3 vote. 3 Republicans voted yes. They were Bob Henskins, Valerie Hodges, and Kirk Talbot. Bob Owen joined the Democrats in opposing the bill, and Caleb Kleinpeter walked out on the bill, which I was very unhappy to see.
Very, very surprised about this. You know, we have hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in our retirement public pension fund. And Blake McGuizz's bill simply would have said that money cannot be invested in any way with money managers that use this woke leftist financial criteria for their investments. In other words, they look to see whether a company in which, or stock company in which they want to invest, embraces this Joe Biden's Green New Energy deal, the climate change, whether or not they embrace the radical leftist curriculum that's being permeated in the public schools like critical race theory, all that kind of stuff. The investment has to be based strictly on financial principles. You would think in a Republican committee that would fly through, wouldn't you?
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think, but not the case.
Not the case. So I'd like to know why Bob Owen voted against that, and I would like to know why Caleb Kleinpeter wasn't in there. I'm not sure what he had going on, and I think Caleb Kleinpeter is a good state senator. I think he does a lot of good things, but that's one heck of a vote to miss right there. You know, that's a hard one to swallow.
Yep. Chris, now moving on to something pretty racy, Senate Bill 283 by Senator Duplessis. This is the bill that he is trying to make it so that gay prostitution would be legal under certain circumstances. I don't know what those certain circumstances are. I didn't read that far down in the bill. I didn't have to know that I would oppose it. It passed out of Senate Judiciary C, which is mind-blowing to me. So it's going to a third reading in the Senate so it'll be up for a Senate vote most likely this week. And I just think we have to hammer the Senate on this.
We have to hammer the Senate. Yeah, I mean, there's a law in Louisiana right now that says that basically that gay sex prostitution for money, commercial prostitution, is illegal. You can't be out in public doing that, and it's the law seems to be pretty good, but apparently maybe I think some of those senators in the Senate Judiciary C prostituted themselves on the altar of public permissiveness. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah,
and
I
how
agree.
Now it's going to the full Senate, but I would encourage. Do we have a call to action up on this yet?
We will.
Yeah, we will.
By the time this airs, we will have one.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that's Royce Duplessis who brings us this beauty.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service. Okay, yes. House Bill 103 by...
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. May I have another?
No.
Okay,
No.
Sorry.
House Bill 103 by Representative Mike Johnson this is basically a transparency bill. So parents can watch school board meetings online or on TV, and some other major government committee meetings can be televised, right, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really important to parents across the state to be able to watch. A lot of parents are very busy. They don't have time to get to all the school board meetings or all the government meetings, but they really do want to know what's going on in their parish, and they want to know the decisions that are affecting their kids in school. And so, to be able to watch these meetings, particularly the important ones, live, is really important to them. And so it'll be a big help to parents. And I appreciate, and I told Representative Johnson how much I appreciated him bringing this bill. He did clarify, Danielle, in the committee, because I asked him that this will not, that these broadcasts will not be archived. So parents will have to watch it live because they can't go back and archive it yet. He said this is just a first bite at the apple, but he will definitely keep in mind next year maybe to amend the bill to allow a feature where they can go, the proceedings can be archived and people can go back and watch them later.
Great. Yeah, because that's important. It is important. It's important for transparency, and it's important just as a matter of public record, I think.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more.
This one, good news on this one. It passed unanimously out of the House and Governmental Affairs without amendments. So nice, clean exit for that bill over to the House floor. Next up is House Bill 110 by Representative Chuck Owen. And this one seemed pretty straightforward to me, Chris. It is just allowing a certain person to know who filed an ethics complaint at the conclusion of the ethics board's action on the complaint. You testified in support of this. It failed bizarrely in committee in a 6-6 vote. Jessica Domingue and Polly Thomas joined the Democrats in opposing this bill. Mike Bayham and Les Farnham were absent. Do you have anything you want to say on this one?
This should have been a 10-4 vote. Peggy Thomas and Jessica Domingue, both Republicans, should have voted for this, and Mike Bayham and Farnham should have been there. This should have been a 10-4 vote, not 6-6. So the bottom, but and what it would do, it's really, really important in a day and age, Danielle, when the government has never been more weaponized against citizens. The idea that an ethics complaint could be filed by any government official or anyone else against a private citizen, and that citizen, no matter how baseless the complaint is, would never, ever have a right to know the identity of the person who filed that complaint. And as I said in my committee testimony, we don't live within the context of a Franz Kafka novel. This is the United States of America, and it is unconscionable that a target of an ethics complaint, a private citizen, would not at some point be able to know who's bringing the complaint against him. So I testified in favor of it. And then I thought we had done a good job. I thought we were well on our way. And I had actually gotten up from the table where I was testifying to go back to my seat. And Representative Jessica Domingue called me back up to my seat because she wanted to have a word with me on a matter that is completely unrelated to the bill.
Yeah. You want to hear that clip, Chris?
Yeah. I think the listener should have a right to know what Jessica Domingue did and how she completely abused her authority in that moment to engage in a false attack against me, and then to use that as a basis upon which to cast the deciding vote against this important legislation.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll very, very, very short. Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You don't like me very much. So
I don't have any issue with
so
you at all.
there were text messages sent out in my campaign that there were absolutely no financial records for. There was no financial, that nobody filed any campaign finance. And I know that your organization went after me pretty hard. So if your organization can't do it and you're not a lobbyist, then, I'm not going to support this bill. But I appreciate it.
My organization did not send one thing out about you. I'd like to show it. Can you prove that? Well,
she's asking the questions, Mr. Alexander. Right.
Okay. So I'm just telling you, but I understand what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, but that is absolutely false, the statement that was just made.
That's fine.
And I have to defend the integrity of my organization.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Got you on record. All right.
Well, she came after you pretty hard there, Chris.
Well, and it's interesting with a lie. First of all, she says that we went after her pretty hard in her campaign.
Meaning LACAG
Well, first
PAC.
of all, let me start
LACAG
with this.
PAC.
The LACAG PAC, yeah. But first of all, what she was accusing me of has absolutely nothing to do. Is she that stupid? She's talking about a PAC that she's saying went after her in a campaign. That has nothing to do with an ethics complaint. No ethics complaint involved here. All this bill does is require disclosure of someone who's filing an ethics complaint against a private citizen, so the accused can know who it is. Her attack on me, first of all, had nothing to do with the bill. Secondly, I am a registered lobbyist. And thirdly, we didn't attack her. All we did was send out some text messages. I think it did some things to support her opponent, but I don't think we ever attacked her.
We never mentioned her name.
We never even mentioned her name. But so the fact that she would vote on legislation here based on a political vendetta that is so false and groundless to begin with really makes me question whether or not she has what's necessary, the kind of integrity or temperament to be a public servant. I mean, it's like, so you don't like a person because they supported, and you don't like LACAG PAC because they supported your opponent in a campaign, and therefore, because you don't like them, you're going to vote against otherwise very good legislation? What kind of person does that?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing was very bizarre to me, I have to say. I think from the looks of it, Chris, if you watch the video, it looked like she's just been waiting for the opportunity to take you to task. So I think you did a very admirable job of defending LACAG. And what can I say? I mean, the whole thing was basically dumb. It was dumb. And
it was dumb. The only thing that's unfortunate about it is that she cast the deciding vote against a very important piece of legislation, and she didn't do it because she had a philosophical opposition to the legislation. She did it because she doesn't like LACAG. Well, let me tell you what, we're not the kind of people that are vindictive, but by the same token, we're not the kind of people that you want to make enemies out of. And I'll say that very clearly as well.
Well, and you know what? We have not had a problem working with people that we've had differences with on many, many pieces of legislation. So I'm not sure what this is all about. But anyway, we can move forward with clean consciences, Chris, per usual.
Absolutely. And, again, we'll pray for Jessica Domain, whatever it is that's bothering her, that's causing her to be unsettled. We're going to pray for her, and I will do so sincerely.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Chris. Well, moving on from that to other topics, House Bill 312, also by Representative Owen. This one is the ivermectin over-the-counter bill, which super happy to see passed with amendments. You said the amendments are keeping it pretty clean, and it passed on 7-4 on party line votes.
Yes, and this is going on now, Danielle, to the House floor? Yeah, and so, if this gets all the way through, Louisiana citizens will be able to get ivermectin over the counter. And if Louisiana citizens had been able to do that during the COVID pandemic, the whole thing probably would have gone down very differently.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, now on over to education. House Bill 71 by Representative Dodie Horton is bringing the 10 Commandments into public schools. This passed 10-2 in a bipartisan vote. 2 Democrats joined the Republicans, Ken Brass and Sylvia Taylor. Barbara Freiberg voted against it, along with Democrat Barbara Carpenter.
Yeah, and this is such a great piece of legislation. I am so thrilled that this legislation will hopefully be signed into law. It is just extraordinary that the 10 Commandments would be posted prominently in public schools throughout Louisiana, doesn't require government money, will probably be done with private donations, private benefactors who will do this. But I can't think of anything more edifying for students in schools across Louisiana than to have the 10 Commandments prominently posted in their schools. You know, Abraham Lincoln, Danielle, said that the Bible and the 10 Commandments are the best gift God ever gave to men. He said all the good the Savior gave to the world was communicated through the Bible and through the 10 Commandments. Without the Bible, we could never know right from wrong. That's Abraham Lincoln. And I agree with him 100%, and I'm so thankful. And sadly, Danielle, in the school, on the wall, may be the first time that many of these students have ever read or seen the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, it is sad, but it's an exciting development for us. And just a reminder, Chris, this one is not a requirement, correct? It's allowing the 10 Commandments to be posted in schools.
Right. Correct.
Great. That should help some of the haters out a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? And as concerned as you and I, as much many sleepless nights you and I have over the haters.
I don't have that kind of time. I like my sleep.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
House Bill 234 by Representative Boyd. This one is the one that would make an entirely new class of employee based on their gender identity and sexual orientation. That bill was scheduled for last week, but it's been rescheduled for the 11th. So we'll see. It lived to die, hopefully another day.
Hopefully another day. So in a nutshell, a transgender goes into a blue collar, a mechanic shop or wherever, and wants to work there. He obviously doesn't fit the profile of someone who would be successful for their business model or help promote their business, but he wants to work there. He's not hired. The presumption is that he has been discriminated against unfairly based upon his transgender status. He therefore sends a demand letter for money or files a lawsuit, and the employer has to prove the reason why he was not fired was not based upon his transgender status, which it was. This can never become a protected category in this state, or it will drive employers out of Louisiana faster than you can even blink.
Yeah, the ones we have left. We're trying to get new ones. We're not trying to drive out the remaining ones, the ones that have held on this long.
Exactly.
No.
Gender orientation and that sort of thing should never, ever be in a protected class for employment discrimination, ever.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's talk about the week ahead, Chris. Besides this bill, there is plenty to keep up with. So the first bill up, there's two bills going to House Appropriations on Monday. The first one is House Bill 114 by Representative Les Farnham. This is the annual supplemental canvass of registered voters. We're in support of that one.
Good piece of legislation, Danielle. We have 600,000 or 700,000 people on registered voter rolls in Louisiana, and who should not be there. And hopefully a supplemental annual canvass will help us clean that up and help make us less vulnerable to that kind of voter fraud.
Yeah, and some of our election integrity friends say that this bill is not needed because it's already in statute that the registrar of voters should be cleaning the voter rolls, which is true, but they're not. So I'm hoping that this additional layer will just put some extra pressure and some fresh text in front of their faces that says this is something that's got to happen.
To get them to do their job.
I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping. That helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of metal stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us for more information. Next up is House Bill 344, also in House Appropriations on Monday. This one is removing the requirement for motor vehicle inspection stickers. See, it's moving. It's moving.
It's moving. It's moving. Thank you, Lord, for this one. I would love to live in a state where I don't have to go every 2 years or whenever it is and get the government's permission to continue driving my car.
Thank you. Thank you. They already have this in Mississippi, by the way, Chris.
That's one of only many reasons that I love Mississippi.
Yeah. All right. Next up is House Bill 491 by Representative Edmonston. This provides relative to the Life and Safety Property Protection Licensing Act. Chris, you'll have to interpret that one for me. It's up in House Commerce on Monday.
This basically, there's a young man who contacted us who's a really, really fine guy who committed a crime over 20 years ago, Danielle, simple robbery, served his time, since has become a very, very different person. He is converted to Christ, and is just an outstanding human being. His dad owns a locksmith company, Tiger Locksmith, in Louisiana, and he wants to take it over one day. And right now, because of that criminal conviction, which is a crime of violence in Louisiana, he is permanently disqualified from ever getting his locksmith license. Well, we don't think that's fair. So this law, will allow a licensing authority to consider granting a license even in a situation where someone's been convicted of a crime of violence, if 15 years has passed from the time their sentence is complete and there has been no further trouble, no problems, and they've demonstrated a consistent pattern of rehabilitation. I believe in redemption. I believe in the power of overcoming obstacles. And I think this bill is very, very important to allow people who have made mistakes but have demonstrated that they have recovered and become different and better people to move on with their lives without these kind of burdens on them.
Yeah, I would love to see this one pass. I'd love to see this gentleman get his second chance and get to be able to carry on the legacy that his father started with his business. So very hopeful for this one, Chris. Okay, next up are there's a ton of bills related to carbon capture coming up in House Natural Resources and Environment this week, all on Tuesday. The first one, there's two related to carbon sequestration, eminent domain. The first one is House Bill 729 by Representative Carter, and the second is House Bill 492 by Representative Guyman. We, Chris, have been long and strong supporters ending eminent domain for carbon capture for any number of reasons, but mainly because it's not proven to be safe, and we have seen recently in our own state that these things blow up. The second reason, which is really probably the first reason, is that our property should not be taken by the government for something that has no proven value add to the citizens.
Exactly. Eminent domain is supposed to be exercised by the government when they have demonstrated that the taking of private property serves a public good, a serious public good. They're building a bridge or a waterway or something that serves all the citizens, and the landowner or the homeowner is compensated adequately, fair market value. This was never meant to be used by private corporations to build pipelines to advance an experimental science that very few people actually believe in. That's why eminent domain has to be repealed when it comes to this carbon capture racket. That's exactly what it is. And so 729 and 492, both good bills. We're supporting both of those.
Yep. And I hope we will see this happen. Also related to carbon capture, Chris, is House Bill 696, also by Representative Guyman. This is related to the unitization of carbon capture and will go a long way in supporting those eminent domain bills, I believe.
Absolutely. This basically says that there is a geographical region where they want to do the CCS pipelines and storage. They cannot do it unless they have the agreement of 75% of the property owners living in the affected geographical area. So this is really, really important and really will indirectly as you said, Danielle, facilitate the repeal of eminent domain indirectly when you require 75% of a geographical area to approve of something. So this is a very important bill, HB 696. This is also by Brett Guyman, who, I just have to say this parenthetically, Danielle, was one of the 19 who stood up in 2023, refused to yield on blowing out the spending cap in 2023. He's a real conservative. We had a chance to talk to him for about 45 minutes earlier today. Very impressed with him. So yes, his CCS unitization bill, we strongly support also.
He is a very impressive guy. And one thing that he said on our conversation with him, Chris, that maybe I'll just bring out for the listeners is this unitization bill is extremely necessary because there's no provision in the law other than eminent domain for these carbon capture pipelines. And whether we like carbon capture or not, whether we agree with it or not, that's really a fight for another day, honestly, because they're coming and it is a way for our pipeline guys to stay in business while the EPA is destroying the oil and gas industry. So I don't want us to throw the baby out with the bathwater on that, even though I think that carbon capture is a complete hoax. And if the government wanted to protect us from the dangers of carbon, they would just plant more trees rather than burying big tanks under the ground and requiring this pipeline nonsense. All of that aside.
Very, very well said. That was very, very well said. And I could not agree with you more that sometimes you've got to work hard and take what you can get.
Yeah. But this bill, the unitization, will actually provide a mechanism for carbon capture companies to be able to get leases in similar ways to oil and gas leases. So it makes this possible where under current law, the only way for it to happen is through eminent domain. So we have to have a workaround to be able to get rid of eminent domain.
Exactly. Well said.
Okay. Well, a couple bills are being brought back. For those of you who've listened to us for the year that we've been in existence, you heard about these bills last year. You probably followed them closely, both in the Education Committee. The first one is HB 121 by Representative Raymond Cruz. This one is about parents having to provide consent for their kids being able to use a pronoun other than their birth gender at school. It's ridiculous that we have to have a bill like this, but it's needed. And it's even more ridiculous that the governor vetoed it last year. But I'm pretty sure this governor won't veto it, Chris.
I don't think he's going to veto it. If you're a he, you're a he. If you're a she, you're a she. Only in Biden's America do we have to do studies to make official determinations that there are differences between male and female. And this bill simply says that no school administrator can refer to any child using a pronoun other than what is on their biological birth certificate unless a parent consents to it, period. And even if a parent consents to it, an employee of the school still does not have to do it if it would violate his deeply held religious convictions. So we're not going to have a bunch of education bureaucrats walking around trying to confuse students in their gender designation and orientation. It strictly says if you're a male, you're a he. If you're a female, you're a she. And again, only in Biden's America would that evoke even marginal controversy.
Yeah. Well said. And a very nice companion bill to that is House Bill 122 by Representative Dodie Horton. And this one, like I said, we saw it last year. It's shocking that we need this, but it is very important because we know that we need it. That's the really sad part. That it prohibits the discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in public schools being initiated by any employee of the school,
including the employee or administrator's own sexual orientation or gender identity. So the real two reasons why this bill is important. The administrators cannot initiate any discussions that would confuse a child about their sexual orientation, can't bring it up, and they also cannot initiate any discussion about their own lifestyle with regard to their sexual orientation. It's off limits. And I'll never forget Pat Moore when this bill was passing through in 2023, the Black Democrat, by whom I've been so impressed in many ways, when she stood up and very passionately said, can we just get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic? We have a failing public school system in Louisiana. Can we get back to teaching our children how to read, how to write, and how to think, and get off of this nonsense? And that was a Black Democrat, and I could not have agreed with her more.
Yeah, and on the topic, Chris, of reading, writing, and arithmetic, on the topic of failing Louisiana schools, there is a bill that has created some amount of stir. It's grabbed a lot of headlines. It's House Bill 745 by Representative Julie Emerson. And it creates and provides for, this is what the bill says, the Louisiana Gator Scholarship Program, a universal school choice program. And people are calling it, Chris, an educational savings account. Now, it's not a savings account. It's not a savings account at all. When I first read that it was a savings account, you and I had this discussion, and I said, well, Chris, it's a savings account. Isn't it just exactly like the savings, the education savings accounts that parents have for their kids who are going to college? Isn't it just that they have some tax exemption from their savings account, or they, from the money that they put into that account for K through 12? Isn't that what this is doing? And you said, no, Danielle, that's not what this is doing. Don't be so naive. You said it a lot nicer than that, but that's how I feel reading the text of this bill when you find out that it's not your own, it's your own money. Sure, right, it's your own money via tax dollars. It's not your personal, it's not a personal savings account for school.
Right. And it's going to be, and it's not a personal savings account. It's our tax dollars that are going to be going to allow parents who have kids in failing public schools now to send their kids to private schools. So I don't know, Danielle, whether the $5,000 or $8,000 or $10,000, whatever, would go straight to the private school, or whether it would go to the parents and then the parents would pay the tuition or whatever it is. I'm not sure. But the big problem that I have with this, look, first of all, I understand completely that parents in public schools are absolutely desperate. I mean, they are desperate to get their kids out of that failing environment. Yeah. And my heart goes out to them. I have deep, deep sympathy. It's not just a matter in many cases, Danielle, about whether or not their kids are learning, which they're not. It's also a matter of their personal safety in this day and age. They don't even know if they can rely on their physical safety. So I have deep sympathy for parents who cannot afford to send their kids to private schools, who are very decent people and would like to be able to do that. The problem with the biggest problem I have with the legislation is this. Anytime you start injecting federal tax dollars into anything, I don't care what it is, everything the federal government touches, it controls and it ultimately destroys. And look what they've done to the public education system. If we start allowing billions and billions of dollars to be injected of federal tax dollars into private schools so that otherwise, so that parents who otherwise would not be able to afford it can send their kids to school there, don't you think for one second that that money is going to come with no conditions? Where the federal government can avail you with its largesse, it can control you. And I guarantee you the federal curriculum, the wokeness, the CRT, all the other garbage that's permeating our public schools throughout the country is going to end up being in the private schools. And don't think for a second that the federal government is not going to poke its head inside that tent. And that's the problem, the main problem that I have with it. Another problem that I have with it is this. I know people who work so very hard to send their kids to private school. They bust their tail. They are by no means rich, but their income level is considered too high to be eligible for this stipend, for this money to send their kid to the private school. So I don't know that that is fair. I think if you're going to allow it for anybody, you should allow it for everybody. Every parent with school-age children in the state, if you're going to start giving people breaks and start giving people accounts so they can government money to send kids to private school, it should apply to every parent in the state, not just those below a certain income level. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Chris. And I didn't when we started this debate a couple weeks ago. You and I started talking this back and forth, and I do agree with you, because why should certain people have the right to direct their tax dollars when not everyone can direct where we want to send our tax dollars? I was thinking about when Louisiana wasn't a 100% pro-life state. We didn't have the option as pro-life believers to say, you know what, you can't send any of my money to Planned Parenthood. We didn't have that capability. And maybe this isn't the same thing, but I don't understand how this is creating kind of a particular class of citizen who gets to direct their tax dollars. What about the people who don't have kids? They don't get to say where those tax dollars
Any
go.
of their tax dollars.
Right.
Where any of their tax dollars are going. That's such a great point. I wish I could wake up tomorrow morning and say, you know what, I would like to direct $10,000 of my tax dollars to the wall.
Yeah.
To the construction of the wall on the border,
Yeah.
and that I had 100% assurance that that's where it was going.
Yeah.
But I don't get to do that. So you're right, Daniel. It's a great point. Why should other people, taxpayers in society, get to direct where the tax money's going?
Yeah. What we need to do is just basically destroy the Department of Education to start with. And really, ultimately, not that this is a solution for parents who are struggling now, and I'm not trying to make light of it in any way, but I honestly do believe that parents and children will be much better served whenever it is local communities, small networks of families even, that are directing the future of the children, not the federal government by any means, not the state government, and frankly, probably not even the parish government. I think that it should be people that your friends and neighbors that you do life with. That's where the funds for sending kids to school should come from. And then you can choose exactly the kind of education you want your child to have. That's my nice utopia for the future, Chris. That's what I hope we can work toward.
And Danielle, you're essentially echoing what Brett Guyman told us earlier. He doesn't make any secret about that. He is a local government conservative across the board, and that's exactly the kind of vision that he kind of laid out for us in our phone call today. I do want to make one last point about this educational savings system. A reasonable interpretation of this legislation and similar bills like this is basically they've given up on the public school system. Yeah. They don't want to try to improve it. They recognize that in many areas of our state, the public school district in those areas are irreversibly lost, gone, cannot be recovered, just been hammered into the ground, and really they will never, ever be revived. It's over. And so instead of, now I don't know that I agree with that. I believe that it is possible to go in and revitalize these public schools if you have good ideas and you promote excellence, and a whole lot of things could be done to improve it. But I believe they've given up on the public schools. So rather than try to improve them, they want to take as much money as they can out of the public schools and divert it to private schools with all kind of federal government strings attached, which, as we talked about a few minutes ago, I think is a recipe for federal tyranny in the private school education system. And if you think the federal government is not going to try to find its way around the constitutional doctrine of separation of church and state, you are kidding yourself. They will do whatever they need to do to get their nose inside that tent.
Yeah. I agree. And, Chris, you shared with me recently an article, a fantastic article that lays this out very succinctly by your sister, Leslie. So we will be linking to that in the show notes for anyone who wants to take a closer look at that argument, because I think, while on its face, it seems like a great idea, whenever you kind of dig into the details, it is the Trojan horse.
It's a great article. Yeah, Leslie is a great writer. I would encourage anybody who wants to sort of get their arms around this issue to read that article.
Yeah. Next up in the Senate this week, Senate Bill 98 by Senator Patrick McMath is on the block. It is this is the cockroach bill, the one that says that it would criminalize the use of driving while talking on your cell phone and holding it in your hand. We oppose this. It was up for a vote last week and it got passed over, Chris. So I'm hoping that the pressure that our listeners have been putting on their senators by taking action at the Action Center on this one has made this bill impossible. But I think we're going to need to keep the pressure up.
We have to keep the pressure up. I'm so thankful for our listeners. I have very little doubt, Danielle, when a bill that is scheduled on the floor or subject to call on the floor does not get called, 9 times out of 10, that means the author does not have the votes to get it passed, which is only a good sign for us on this cell phone cockroach bill. And I guarantee you that the 27 or 20, the functional equivalent of 27 or 28 cans of Raid that our listeners poured on this cockroach had something to do with the fact that bill was not called for a vote. So please keep up the good work. I don't want talking on a handheld cell phone in my vehicle to be criminalized in the state of Louisiana. The vast majority of people are able to do that very responsibly. I don't want to be pulled over. I don't want to be ticketed. I don't want to have to go in front of a judge. I don't want to have to pick up trash. And I certainly don't want to create a further pretext for a cop to infringe even more significantly on my privacy rights once he gets me pulled over on the side of the road. This is a terrible big government bill. It's amazing, Danielle, of all the things we have going on in this state, of all the things that we have to deal with, we have to push legislation that will further restrict the freedom of citizens and make more money for the state and give insurance companies an opportunity to raise premiums on Louisiana citizens. This is the legislation that apparently is the priority in our state.
Yeah.
But far be it for me to be officious or to go on an unduly negative rant.
Well, one other thing I want to mention about this, Chris, is we did let the senators know, every single senator know, that this was a key vote for us and that we would be basing our scorecard on the way that they voted. And so I just want to remind our listeners, on the Action Center, on the right-hand side of the panel, you can see a little link that says scorecard. And you may just want to check that out. It may not be the most up-to-date at the moment, but if you keep checking back, we have a couple votes, particularly some of these terrible committee votes that we revealed today, that we will be keeping updated there. So you can see where your legislator falls in terms of the way that we view them at LACAG and the State of Freedom.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that every now and then we get one that's so significant that we are going to use their vote as one of the components of our ranking of.
Yeah. Okay. And then just kind of in closing, there's 2 bills that we want you to just be on alert for. The first one is House Bill 256 by Representative Dodie Horton. And this one is about a minor's consent for medical procedures. I think we may have mentioned this before. Chris, this is related. This is really about closing some of those loops related to kids being able to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to be a boy or I want to be a girl. Can I just go and get some surgeries and get some drugs to do that without their parents' consent? Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. Paige Lowry from Moms for Liberty and a strong supporter of LACAG pointed that out to me right in the middle of Gabe Furman's transgender minor legislation last year. She calls me up and said, Chris, do you realize now that in Louisiana, a minor can go into a hospital or a medical clinic and say basically that they're not feeling well, they think they have something wrong with them, and they can get a surgical procedure or whatever kind of medication a doctor thinks they may need without having to get their parents' consent? I said, you've got to be kidding me. No possible way. Well, she actually came over and brought me the statute, and she was right. And so this legislation basically says that no minor in the state of Louisiana will undergo any kind of surgical procedure or medical procedure or healthcare procedure without getting the parents' informed written consent. And I do think, Danielle, that it is cleanup legislation.
Yep. And it may not be brought, you said, under this number. It may be substituted. So this may not be the number to look for, but we will we'll keep it updated on the Action Center. And then, of course, we'll let you know here what's happening.
Very important piece of legislation.
The last one to flag for you is Senate Bill 485 by Representative Valerie Hodges. And this one is a second bite at the apple for us on the transactional gold and silver legislation that failed in committee. Representative Raymond Cruz brought. And Chris, when we spoke with Representative Cruz, I actually can't remember who we talked to about this, but they said that the main point of it was that it addressed some of the issues that the bankers had, some of the things that were making the bankers nervous. It's still at its core going to be the same bill. It's going to operate the same way should it get passed. However, it's just kind of touching on some of those issues to alleviate the concerns that the bankers had.
Yeah. Still a very, very good piece of legislation. Raymond Cruz, who brought the original legislation, said that this is very good legislation. And very importantly, because it's a new bill with Senator Hodges, it will go before a different committee on the Senate side, and we will not have to be dealing with a committee filled with apparent rhinos, including the Jessica Domain, who took the pleasure of voting against this legislation in its original form with Representative Cruz, as well as many other Republican rhinos on that committee. So we have a new bill, but substantively the same bill, going before a new and more conservative committee, Senator Hodges' new bill 485. And I'd be surprised, Danielle, if Representative Cruz does not carry this over on the House side when it gets over there.
Yeah, I hope that when it gets to the House side, they can get it into a different committee for hearing.
Yes. And yeah, that would be absolutely outstanding if we could do that. But it's that bill, Danielle, Representative McCormick said that this gold and silver bill, being able to engage in gold and silver, exchange it as transactional currency in Louisiana, to use it just like money, is the most important piece of legislation since he's been in the legislature, because it ties into ESG, it ties into central bank digital currency, it ties into federal overreach into every part of our economic system in Louisiana, and it will allow us to get out from under the federal government. I really think that's why economically, and I think that's why Representative Cruz believes that this is so important.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with him more. I was talking to some of the people who I know that are investing in gold and silver, and they're just so excited at the prospect of this bill. So, and with good reason. I think there's an argument to be made. Representative Cruz talked about it being a place of safekeeping for your money and for your dollars, to have it in gold and silver. And I think, yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to protect yourself against inflation. It's a great way to protect yourself against dollar volatility. So we'll see. I hope it gets legs.
When this passes through, Danielle, I know you're not a rock and roll fan, but when this passes through, I am going to play for you one Old Bad Company song called Silver, Blue, and Gold, the color of the sky, I am told. So when it gets through and it passes, I'll play you that song as we celebrate, because it's a great, great bill. And hopefully Governor Landry praying that he will express support for it publicly as well.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah. Well, Danielle, it's always a pleasure being with you. The time just flies by, as I always say. But you know what? When you're talking about over-the-counter ivermectin and eminent domain and gay prostitution bills, it all goes by fast. So I'm so thankful for our listeners. I'm so thankful for the State of Freedom warriors who are helping us to build our presence and our platform across the state. From deep in the heart, thank you. And I feel connected with all of you, even the ones that I've never met personally. I feel connected with you, and I love you as though you were sitting right here in the same room with me.
Yeah. And if people want to support the State of Freedom, you guys have been so generous, and we're so thankful for your support. please visit us at freedomstate.us. Of course, if you would like to advertise with us, let us know, drop us a line. There's a way to do that on there, or you can just drop us a line at info@freedomstate.us. We'd also love to hear from you about the bills you're following, like Chris mentioned earlier, or if there are particular guests you'd like for us to interview. I think we want to just keep the good content going, and so your support will make that possible. You can also support LACAG at lacag.org. Obviously, Chris is down there fighting the good fight, and I'm over here manning the action center behind the scenes during the day. And so we're trying to keep things very, very orderly for everyone, so you know what's going on amidst the chaos that we have to dig through to kind of make sure that we know what's happening when.
Well, I have to tell you, Danielle, there's absolutely no one that I would rather have in the control center than you. And I feel like, I'm. There are certain days when I feel somewhat rudderless, but all I have to do is look and see how you've laid out the format, the bills, and I'm rudderless no longer. And I don't think we're going to have to go ahead. And I know we discussed it. I don't think we're going to have to do the shot collar after all. I would rather not, because I think I'm becoming more and more compliant and more dutiful in discharging my obligations. And really, I mean, it's probably because I want to avoid that shot collar. So we will continue forward. You're an outstanding American and a great human being. And until next time, Danielle, we will take multiple steps to preserve the great state of freedom in Louisiana this week and every week.
We can and we will, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC, at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.